Yilan is the kind of guy who's built like a scarecrow, scaring off every living thing, so he decided to clap a ghost girl who was even uglier than him. The story began on a cold, feverish night, so cold that Yilan caught the flu and started coughing profusely. That night, he was the only student in the school dorm, as the area was completely empty. He immediately thought of going to the clinic as he couldn't continue to bear the intense headache he felt. At that moment, a sudden gush of icy wind whooshed across the dorm hall, and the lights began to flicker while the curtains billowed. These unusual activities scared the shit out of Yilan, who immediately remembered the rumor that circulated in the school last year about a female ghost in a white dress that wandered the dorm at night. The rumor of the female ghost started after a student, Xiaoman, hung herself in the male dorm room because her loser boyfriend dumped her. After that unfortunate incident, it was said that 2 other students also hung themselves in the dorm, and everyone thought they were either possessed by Xiaoman's ghost or had finally decided to free the world of their uselessness. However, thinking about all the paranormal activity only worsened his already excruciating headache. Just then, he got up and decided to go to the community clinic. He was left with 2 choices: risk it and flee to the clinic, or stay like a scared wimp and die. As he began to walk, he felt dizzy as everything twirled around him, and he couldn't find the door. At that moment, he fell to the ground, landing on his worthless face. He wondered if he was going to die and thought about how miserable his life had been. He regretted being a riskless idiot all his life, never developing any meaningful plot. Just then, the lights close to his room began to flicker and soon went out. He suddenly heard an ethereal female voice asking him if he had seen her rope. He looked up and couldn't believe his eyes as Xiaoman's ghost stood above him. He immediately wished the floor could swallow him, but he remembered Casper was a friendly ghost and thought not all ghosts are evil. However, he wondered if Xiaoman was there to hurt or possess him. The thought of Xiaoman possessing him seemed like a better option, as she could control his body to stand and take him to the hospital for treatment. So he grabbed her dress and begged her to possess him. At that instant, Xiaoman looked at how ugly he was and told him he was too ugly to be possessed. He wondered why the ghost was roasting him harder than barbecue chicken, so he got furious and demanded she possess him. Realizing Xiaoman might not possess him, he hugged her tightly and immediately felt her cold, ghostly, moderate melons. Xiaoman immediately cringed at his shitface and realized he smelled worse than an Anon convention. So she pushed him away, and as he fell to the ground, she noticed his skibidi pants and wondered how one person could be this useless. However, Yilan didn't give 2 shits about what she thought and had 0 chills. Just then, he stood up and began to chase the ghost, demanding she possess him. Realizing the dude was probably an Area 51 escapee, she decided to flee for her life. However, Yilan charged at the ghost and suddenly tripped, bumped into her, instantly possessing her. A few minutes later, he regained consciousness and wondered what had happened. He moved towards the mirror and realized he had become a freaking pale female ghost. Upon seeing his reflection, Yilan was confused. He felt he should see his face in the mirror, not Xiaoman's, since she possessed his body. So he questioned her, asking why she was acting so shy and hiding inside. Upon realizing that Xiaoman didn't give a shit about what he thought and refused to answer the question, he continued to insist she talk to him until she could no longer resist the good shit. So she finally dissociated her spirit from his body, and Yilan emerged from her. Now, out of the ghost body, Yilan realized he was still very sick and hadn't gone to the hospital. Yilan then begged Xiaoman to repossess him and take him to the community clinic, promising she could leave his body afterward. Just then, he quickly jumped on her and grabbed her, and they merged again, so he thanked her for being considerate. As Yilan headed to the clinic, he was stoked to discover that he could manipulate gravity and was floating. A few minutes later, he floated outside the school and suddenly heard a female voice scream. He immediately remembered that the school headmaster, Liu, was always around, developing intense plots with all the female students. So he headed to see the action in 3D. When he arrived at the scene, he saw Liu with the school steward girl, Xiaoyu. Meanwhile, Xiaoyu cautioned the freaky, ugly headmaster that they could get caught, as people might see them. Seeing Liu trying to have his way with the shoddy, disgusted Yilan, so he decided to record the censored scene, but as he brought out his phone, he immediately heard a voice behind him that stunned him. The voice told him he was crossing the line. As he turned, he came face to face with an ugly waste of space and wondered why the dude had a knife stuck to his enormous cranium. Seeing the uglier version of Shrek frightened him to death, so he acted impulsively, and one-punched Man the creepy ghost, who immediately whooshed away. Afterward, he decided to make a move on the cray-cray headmaster, and as he advanced toward them, they noticed his presence. The headmaster then demanded to know who was sneaking up on them. So, Yilan showed himself. Seeing Yilan's ghostly appearance, Xiaoyu nearly became a ghost herself as she passed out from intense fear, while the headmaster stood in total shock, unable to believe his eyes. Upon seeing Superhuman, who Yilan possessed, the disgusting headmaster begged for his pathetic life, insisting he didn't know she would hang herself. Superhuman, however, mentioned that she was executed out of injustice, and that it was he who did it to her. Meanwhile, the sight of the ugly old cracky antagonized Superhuman so much that she whacked his worthless head multiple times at inhuman speed. Amidst tears, the headmaster revealed to Superhuman that he wasn't responsible for her death. He said that because she had already SK'd the losers who violated her, he only did the job of concealing the information to protect the school and his career, not knowing she would go as far as to take her own life. However, Superhuman revealed that the whole school thought she was a thirsty bitch, who had a nasty behavior of messing around with guys, and her magnum craving behavior ended her life. The headmaster then apologized for being a useless douchebag, and begged her not to send him to Nirvana so soon. Meanwhile, Yilan thought that even though the headmaster deserved to be sent to the afterlife, it would be disastrous for Xiaoyu's reputation, as everyone would think she eliminated the headmaster. So he advised Superhuman to spare his fat, lame ass and instead force him to turn himself into the police, which would shed light on the matter and clear her reputation. Superhuman thought his words made sense, so she agreed, instructing the fat sausage head to report himself to the police, but he declined, betting not to, as it would end his life. Hearing his words enraged Superhuman, as the ugly fat only cared about ruining his reputation and not about his life. She then thought it best to teach him a lesson, and Yilan, thinking of ways to punish the headmaster, came up with a 500 IQ idea of choking him to death. So Superhuman summoned a rope, tied it around the headmaster's neck, and began to choke the living daylight out of him. Just as Liu's health bar was nearly 0%, Yilan called out to Superhuman, telling her it was enough. So she released the disgusting old man, who had already peed his pants in fear, thinking he was about to meet Lucifer in hell. Superhuman then gave him one last chance to turn himself in, warning that no excuse would save him from hell if he didn't. At that moment, Liu quickly raced to turn himself in, not wanting to meet his doom. Yilan then informed Superhuman that the useless headmaster would need monitoring as he might go to a priest instead of the police. Meanwhile, Yilan thought Superhuman had possessed his body, but she disclosed that since he penetrated her body, he had possessed her. She further clarified that if she had entered his body, she would have taken on his appearance, not vice versa. At that moment, Yilan realized the impossible had happened. He had possessed a ghost. Following this, Superhuman informed Yilan that the headmaster was getting away. Yilan then commanded them to follow him, but realized they couldn't leave Xiaoyu lying unconscious. So Superhuman suggested she carry her instead, which Yilan agreed to. As Superhuman carried her, Yilan climaxed from feeling her sumptuous body and curvy thighs. Shortly afterward, the psycho headmaster arrived at the police station with Superhuman still behind him, carrying the Xiaoyu. Suddenly, they encountered the fat ghost with the kitchen knife in his cranium, now accompanied by an even uglier demon. Yilan thought they looked familiar and wondered why they resembled overpowered, evil versions of Timon and Pumbaa. The demon gangster with an enormous beer belly named Hua demanded they halt and asked Superhuman why she crossed realms, and beat up Metalhead, the fat ugly ghost, with the kitchen knife. Hua then got furious and threatened to teach Superhuman a lesson for thinking she was hot stuff. That moment, he charged at her, intending to land a devastating punch, but Superhuman dodged and slapped his fat face so hard that it enraged him even more. As he prepared to land another punch, he realized he was punching the air, and his attacks were useless. Just then, Bro received a solid face warping slap that sent him flying like a useless doll. Seeing his boss sent flying, Metalhead knew he was screwed. He then tried to tell Superhuman to remember they were homies, but she responded that she didn't associate with anything as ugly as him, and then gave him the same VIP treatment his boss received. Yilan then wondered if there were lost ghosts everywhere that he didn't get to see regularly. Superhuman enlightened him that only ghosts with grievances would come in contact with humans, and that most live normal lives. Yilan asked her if her grievances would disappear after Liu turned himself in. She affirmed that once the shackles of her grief were resolved, she would leave the dorm and regain her freedom. A few minutes later, the headmaster stormed into the police station, pleading for help. The cops recognized him, and he revealed that a ghost was after him. At that moment, the old geezer grabbed the cop's legs and begged for assistance. Seeing his desperation, the cop asked where the ghost was, and the headmaster pointed outside the window. However, the two lame cops, who shared a single brain cell between them, couldn't see any ghosts and wondered what the old psycho was on. Just then, the headmaster thought that the strong yang energy of the police station, being a law enforcement agency, would keep the ghost at bay. At the same time, Superhuman confirmed to Yelan that they couldn't enter the police station, but decided to give it a try since she had grown stronger after Yelan had penetrated her. So, Superhuman lunged forward and entered the police station. Seeing her, Liu clung tightly to the cop's thighs, causing the cop to scream in pain as his testicles nearly popped like soap bubbles. Just then, Superhuman leaned forward, strangling the old fool while accusing him of being a disgusting liar, who had promised to turn himself in but was doing the opposite. She then threatened to choke him to death if he continued lying. Realizing he had no other option, the headmaster spilled facts and confessed the truth to the cops, shocking them. Later on, Yelan took Xiaoyu home, and he felt fulfilled for having done something meaningful in his entire life. However, while he stared at the Xiaoyu, Yelan was entranced by her cannons and thought of groping her. Superhuman then separated herself from Yelan's body, which made him feel a sharp headache and remember his unattended cold flu. Superhuman then thanked him for his help and promised not to forget his kindness for the rest of her ghostly life. At that moment, he realized her dark, ghostly appearance had transformed into that of a pretty girl with an endearing charm. Superhuman suddenly noticed she had regained her original appearance after settling her grievances. Upon seeing her, Yelan activated Sim mode and couldn't stop drooling. He then promised to care for her for the rest of his life. At that moment, he immediately envisioned a happy ending where she would be his study partner, and they would smooch and develop a massive plot. However, his excitement was shattered when Superhuman revealed that she would leave as soon as she could feel herself being summoned. Superhuman suddenly began to hear her name being called to the afterlife, so she hovered in the sky amidst a bright light. Dumbfounded, Yelan asked if she was heading to heaven since she looked like an angel. As he bid her farewell, he suddenly noticed she was not moving upwards but staying in one spot. He loudly asked why she was stuck, thinking the elevator to heaven must be broken. With the speed of lightning, Superhuman descended and landed on Yelan's face, causing him to fall to the floor, spurting blood from his nose. Superhuman quickly regained her composure and tried to help him up. Yelan, who had fainted when she smashed his face, regained consciousness and asked why she didn't descend to heaven, but descended instead. Superhuman then revealed that she needed a toll fee to enter heaven. Yelan then wondered how heaven could collect money for entrance and realized that if this were true, his chances of getting into heaven were zero because he was a certified brokey. However, Superhuman explained that Kidian, a company that serves the earth, spirit, and heavens, was responsible for collecting the fee, and failure to pay meant spirits would remain on earth and suffer. Superhuman then asked him to pay her toll fee to enter heaven, which gagged the shit out of him. He immediately thought of ways to evade the question but couldn't come up with anything, so he asked how much the fee was. She disclosed that the fee was $50 million, shocking Yelan as he had never seen such an amount in his entire life. He lamented that he was just a useless high school student who couldn't even afford his gym subscription. However, Superhuman pointed out that $50 million was just the Earth's equivalent, and if he converted it to Kidian's currency, it wouldn't be that much, and she could help him make it in no time. She then gave him the rope she used to hang herself as a parting gift to remember when she left. Suddenly, Superhuman began to ascend again and wished him the best in making money. Yelan yelled at her for being a scam and told her he didn't agree to participate. After yelling, his head soon began to ache even more intensely, and he got pissed because Superhuman had left without taking him to the clinic for treatment. After a while, he approached Xiaoryu, who was still unconscious, and begged her to wake up. She woke up and immediately snapped because she had memories of the ghost in her head. She then looked at Yelan intently and thought the dude wasn't wearing pants, so she screamed at him for being uncultured. However, Yelan pulled up his shorts and showed her his boxers. On the other hand, Metalhead spied on them across the street as all this happened. Yelan saw the fat creep but decided not to confront him, thinking he wouldn't be able to fight without Xiaoman's help, so he chose to avoid him instead. He then asked Xiaoyu to help take him to the hospital, and she accepted. Several hours later, Yilan found himself on a hospital bed with Xiaoyu beside him. He looked at her and noticed she seemed gloomy, wondering if she was worried about Liu. He felt that the Japanese Adolf Hitler was too disgusting and old to be clapping such a baddie. Just then, Xiaoyu informed him she was going home to care for her son. However, he warned her not to leave so late, as ghosts were lurking on the school premises. Hearing this, Xiaoyu yelled at him, calling him a moron and insisting there were no such things as ghosts. She then stormed out of the hospital room, leaving Yilan alone on the bed. The following morning, while sleeping, Yilan heard voices calling his name from deep inside the slumberland. Though too tired to wake up, the voices intensified, and he woke to find Xiaoman. She told him something terrible had happened to Xiaoyu, the store lady. He asked what had happened, and Xiaoman revealed that Metalhead was after her, and she might be in grave danger. Yilan initially doubted her claim and asked how she knew since she had initially left for Neverland. She then revealed she feared the ugly kitchen knife ghost would come after him, so she secretly stayed behind to prevent it. Yilan then suggested he possess Xiaoman so they could confront the ugly bacteria together. However, she informed him that it was daylight, and she couldn't wander around like a fugitive, so he would have to do it himself. Her words enraged him, as he had never planned to be the Ghostbusters in his entire life. Following this, Yilan headed to Xiaoyu's store, and as he entered, he found her emitting a dark aura. Invisible Xiaoman then instructed him to expose her to sunlight. Noting she was acting inhuman, but the Dachabag decided to take a picture of her as proof. He then pulled up the room blinds to expose her to sunlight, but Xiaoyu continued acting like a deranged bitch. That moment, she charged at him and demanded that he leave her alone and mind his business. Xiaoyu immediately from exhaustion, and as her body dropped, Yilan caught her before she cemented the ground. As he stared at her unconscious body, he noticed her two large dumplings and felt an urge to rest on them. However, Xiaoyu soon regained consciousness and saw the disgusting MC trying to grope her. She yelled at him for being the most useless MC in anime history and hollered at him to get off. Just then, Yilan felt embarrassed and tried to explain the situation to her, showing her the scratches she made on his arm while possessed. But Xiaoyu acted like she had amnesia and claimed she didn't remember a thing. So Yilan showed her the picture he took when she was acting all cray-cray. Upon seeing the Evil Dead scene, she was shocked to see herself behaving like Satan. Yilan then interrogated her a few minutes later, asking if she had wandered about the night before after he specifically warned her of the evil spirit lurking around the school premises. She immediately grew angry and asked why he was superstitious and always talking about ghosts. Yilan then tried to prove that ghosts were real, showing her a picture of her behaving like Constantine. She immediately grabbed the phone from his hands and deleted the picture, warning him to stop taking pictures of ladies without asking for permission. Yilan soon grew tired of her unappreciated behavior and warned her to watch herself as the short, fat demon might come back for her again, possess her, and this time finally take her to hell. A few minutes later, Yilan was furious for being treated less than a human being and blamed Xiaoman for forcing him to help Xiaoyu. However, Xiaoman asked him to stop accusing her and explained that she was trying to help him. She disclosed that his good deeds would definitely be repaid by karma. As they walked down the street, Yilan felt he was too weak to fight against demons and couldn't be much help. At that moment, Xiaoman disclosed that he was actually a Jigachad, hinting at his impressive performance against Xiaoyu when she was possessed. That instant, Li Yan felt like the strongest man alive and decided to test his overpowered abilities on school grounds. He then put a timer and ran a 100-meter sprint. As he sprinted, he realized he had broken Usain Bolt's world record and became the fastest man alive. Yilan was dumbfounded and couldn't believe he made Usain Bolt look like a noob. He then decided to give it another try, breaking Sonic's record this time. Meanwhile, Xiaoman watched him display his abilities proudly like a supportive mom on game day. Later, she suggested Yi Lan test his strength on the basketball court since the school had just added a dynamometer. Following this, they headed to the school court and met Mr. Caramel, the school's dark-skinned, Superhuman physical education teacher. Xiaoman disclosed that Mr. Caramel had the heaviest punch in the school, with a force of 300 kilograms. Before she could say more, Yi Lan confidently claimed he could punch with a force of 500 kilograms in his current state. He readied himself and delivered a Superman punch to the punching bag force gauge, causing a massive explosion that created a hole in the basketball court wall. At that moment, Yi Lan and Xiaoman stood amazed at his Goku-level strength, but quickly realized a teacher had noticed the damage they had caused, so they fled from the basketball court to the hall. As they ran, Yi Lan heard voices echoing through the school hall. He decided to investigate, and peeking around a corner, he saw Xiaoyu holding onto a mature baby boy. In a blink, teachers came rushing towards Xiaoyu, loudly pleading with her not to hurt the baby and to put him down. Yi Lan quickly realized that Xiaoyu had been possessed again by Metal Head. Recognizing the evil at hand, Yi Lan charged at Xiaoyu with blinding speed, amazing the students. As he got close to her, he tried to grab her, but she moved slightly, causing him to crash uncontrollably into the safety barrier. In that instant, Xiaoyu jumped high into the sky like Catwoman. Xiaoyu jumped over the safety barrier and headed towards the skyscraper. Yi Lan followed suit, jumping over the barrier and chasing her to the tall building. Xiaoyu climbed the stairs at incredible speed and went to the rooftop terrace. As Yi Lan tried to stop her, he mistakenly grabbed the back of her clothes, tearing part of it. Just then, Xiaoyu jumped off the balcony while holding the baby. In that critical moment, Yi Lan unleashed the power of the rope and swung it like Tarzan, catching her feet and pulling her upwards. He suddenly noticed that Xiaoyu and the baby were flying over his head. She then landed on him while Yi Lan caught the baby. Noticing his plans of eliminating the baby and Xiaoyu had failed, Metal Head dispossessed her and became furious. He then threatened Yi Lan to stay away from his business, or he'd visit the afterlife faster than a fat kid on a Snickers bar. At that moment, Yi Lan noticed Metal Head's presence and delivered a devastating punch to the fat, ugly ghost's face. Enraged, Yi Lan yelled at the spineless coward to stay clear of Xiaoyu, or he'd beat him up every day, twice on Sunday. Yi Lan then pulled out the kitchen knife stuck in Metal Head's cranium, causing him to scream in pain. He thought of obliterating the disgusting evil spirit, but remembered the dude was already a resident in hell and wondered how he would finish off someone who was already finished. Just then, Xiaoman informed him to threaten Metal Head with crushing his soul, as all ghosts dreaded their souls being crushed. Upon hearing the threat, Metal Head became petrified and begged for his soul not to be crushed. Yi Lan then asked him what Xiaoyu did to him that made him want to end her and her baby so badly. Metal Head then disclosed that he was just trying to settle his grievances and that preventing him was going against the rules, which his boss wouldn't let slide easily. Yi Lan confidently assured him that Hua, his dumbass boss, had already got his ghost butt whipped and was no threat. Yi Lan then insisted that Metal Head answer his question. So Metal Head revealed that he was on a revenge mission for being cheated on by Xiaoyu, which led to his eye sky. Metal Head then asserted that he was Xiaoyu's husband, and that he wasn't eliminated by anyone but self-destructed when he wanted to bust her illicit affair. On that day, he slipped, fell down the stairs, and mistakenly had the kitchen knife pierce his head. Hearing his sad tale, Yi Lan couldn't contain his laughter and thought that was the dumbest way to die and should definitely be included in the show 1,000 Ways to Die. Xiaoyu, who had been eavesdropping on their conversation, became sick of the bullshit she overheard. She immediately stood up and pushed Yi Lan aside. On seeing her, Metal Head charged towards her, but she halted his movement with her palms, which startled Yi Lan. In the heat of the moment, Xiaoyu berated Metal Head for being a disgusting, ugly loser when he was alive, and even as a ghost, still very much useless. She continued to roast him, calling him a spiritual bully only good for bullying women and children. Metal Head immediately got enraged at her words and swore to end her quickly. In that minute, he rushed at her with every fiber of his being, but Yi Lan quickly unleashed the power of the rope and lashed him like a rebellious child. With every lash Metal Head received, his essence burned and dissipated. Yi Lan wondered why the dude was screaming like he was thrown into hot oil and thought the rope must indeed be powerful. Just then, Xiaoyu carried her baby and tried to flee from the two nutcases, but Yi Lan called her attention to the fact that she was almost unclad. Yilan then took off his shirt and gave it to her to cover up. She collected the shirt and put it on, but the menace didn't leave them alone and thought of attacking her again. However, this time, Xiaoyu was ready for him and taunted him to come and attack her. Meanwhile, Yilan noticed the baby was burning up, so Xiaoyu decided to take the child to the community clinic, but instructed Yilan to ensure he didn't let the short afterlife glitch escape so he wouldn't be able to harm them in the future. As she left, Yilan turned and scolded Metalhead for behaving too extra, reminding him that the child was still his and he wanted to jump off a building with him. His words crushed Metalhead's hot coal soul, so he decided to take off his hat. He then revealed that he didn't want to do it but was cajoled by Hua, his ugly boss. He further disclosed that his soul would be crushed if he didn't obey Hua's command. Just as he finished his confession, he self-immolated, which shocked Yilan and Xiaoman. In that moment, his soul was abruptly seized and dragged into the fiery abyss of hell by the two-horned devil himself. Meanwhile, Xiaoman and Lei Yan watched in shock as they witnessed the damning of his soul. As Lei Yan inspected hell more closely, he noticed two ugly demons, one with the head of an ox and the other with the face of a horse. The sight of their haunting faces made him question why they looked like serial killers. Meanwhile, Metalhead continued to plead for salvation as he was dragged toward the gates of hell. At that moment, Xiaoman implored Lei Yan to save Metalhead, but Lei Yan thought that the Dachebag who intended to harm a child did not deserve to be saved. Xiaoman then pointed out that if he didn't save him, all their efforts to rescue his soul would be in vain. Lei Yan considered her words and realized they made sense. He then loudly commanded the demons, who were about to close the gates of hell, to stop. The horribly looking fiends turned to him with menacing red eyes and demanded to know what he wanted. Lei Yan asserted they should have consulted him before carting Metalhead away like trash. The fiends then asked Lei Yan what he wanted. Lei Yan stood confidently as if he knew what to say and uttered some gibberish. The demons looked at him with confusion and pity, wondering from which psychiatric ward he might have escaped. They reconsidered and assumed he was asking for payment for helping them capture Metalhead's spirit. So the two-horned demon threw a stash of money at him and told him to call them if he had more of such goods. Lei Yan opened the stash and found gold coins, immediately becoming the happiest man on earth. However, while he stared at the gold coins, the demons assumed he was dissatisfied with the amount they paid for the evil spirit. They inquired if he was trying to negotiate, angrily stating that was the market price. The two-horned fiend furiously asserted that they would get into trouble if caught haggling with him, and he would also face the consequences. In that instant, Lei Yan prepared to use the kitchen knife he had pulled out of Metalhead's cranium. Lei Yan considered burning the kitchen knife in a spiritual flame, believing it would activate its S-rank abilities and potentially enable him to obliterate the fiends. However, the ugly fiend with a ridiculous mohawk informed him that the kitchen knife was a low-grade spirit weapon and couldn't be anything more. Just then, the sky darkened, and thunder rumbled amidst lightning. Noticing the change in weather, the fiends informed Lei Yan that they had to leave. At that moment, Lei Yan noticed an energy sphere enveloping the sky, and amidst a blinding light, Kitty and officials emerged. A random dude and a purple-haired Baoji shorty appeared and inspected the scene. The random dude informed the purple-haired baddie that the aura he initially sensed was gone, and they had arrived a minute too late. After thoroughly scanning the area for several minutes, they flew like Hancock to the school's track and field. Upon arriving at the field, the dude brought out a book, ink, a chair, and a feather from his ratchet briefcase. He then loudly announced that all the souls within the Soul Gathering Dome should materialize as it was time for an interrogation. At that moment, the purple-haired chick raised her hands and created a Soul Gathering Dome that covered the entire field. A portal soon appeared in the sky, and with a loud thud to the ground, Hua emerged from it. Other frightening ghosts began to materialize, turning the scene into a Halloween show. A few minutes later, the freaks stood in a double line, presenting themselves one by one. Hua was first in line for interrogation, so he was tied with a spirit-infused glowing rope. The rope drained the life from him, and he screamed in agony like a banshee. Meanwhile, Lei Yan, who had now possessed Xiaoman and taken her ghost form, watched the drama unfold from their hiding spot. Confused about what was happening, Lei Yan inquired about the identities of the tormentors and why they were unleashing so much terror. Xiaoman revealed that the purple-haired girl was Wenru, the Kitty and regional manager, and she didn't know the man's identity. He further inquired if the neon light covering the school field was the soul-gathering dome, and Superhuman confirmed it. She explained that the soul-gathering dome was Gideon's A-grade equipment, and that regular people couldn't see it. She further revealed that only spirits within the area could see it, and upon seeing it, they were compelled to emerge. Suddenly, a phone rang underneath her dress, shocking Superhuman. Her startled reaction alerted Wenru, who began advancing in their direction. Superhuman soon managed to switch off the phone, and Lair revealed that it was actually his mom calling. Realizing Wenru was approaching, they decided to hide. Thinking quickly, Superhuman blended herself seamlessly into a nearby portrait, camouflaging from view. However, Lair, curious about why they hid from the pretty girl, decided to check out her moderate giant, and as he cautiously leaned out from the portrait, he found himself face to face with Wenru. In that moment, Lair's brain froze, paralyzing him with fear. But in the awkward silence, he realized Wenru hadn't noticed him. She simply admired the portrait that looked like it was drawn with the left hand before walking on by. Wenru then went outside to meet the dude, whose name remained unknown, and asked him what he had found from his interrogation. The manga NPC informed her that, although the ghosts were useless and didn't have any tangible information, he had confirmed that there were actually 2 soul-smuggling cases. Wenru, frustrated that their efforts were as useless as Lair's face, asked him to close the case for now. The NPC revealed that the headquarters hadn't sent him just for a soul-smuggling case. He informed her that if everything that happened weren't covered up, it would expose the board of directors' secret, so every soul on the premises would have to be eliminated. He then ordered Wenru to get rid of the ghosts. However, Wenru hesitated, firmly asserting that the ghosts were the company's assets according to company rules. Noticing her defiant attitude, the boy band leader threatened that the company would replace her if she refused his order. Meanwhile, Lair and Superhuman, still hiding inside the school building, noticed the sudden quietness outside and decided to take a look. As they peeked out, they saw a massive outburst of souls ascending to the sky, realizing that all the souls outside had been crushed. Witnessing this horrible sight, Lair asked Superhuman if the souls could ever be reincarnated. She responded, telling him that, sadly, their souls had been completely obliterated. Lair, suspicious of Superhuman's calm attitude, demanded to know if she was hiding anything from him. He reminded her that after she encouraged him to gain good karma by helping Chiyoyu, she did the opposite of good and sold Metalhead to the soul smugglers for gold coins. He told her that even though she talked about doing good, her actions were those of the devil. Superhuman then disclosed that selling Metalhead was actually good because souls were a necessary resource for many worlds. Feeling betrayed and lied to by Superhuman, Lair told her he didn't want any part of the craziness anymore. However, Superhuman told him it was too late to back out now, and revealed that the investigator from the headquarters was already involved and wouldn't leave until he got what he was looking for. Upon hearing her words, Lair became concerned for his safety, fearing that Wenru would torture him 100 times if she managed to catch him. Superhuman then suggested that their only option was to find the toll fee immediately. She added that he should lay low until everything blew over, and once she was gone, he could return to being a worthless high school student. She also reminded him that she still needed $50 million. Hearing this, Lady Anne wondered how much the gold coins would be worth if converted to money. At that moment, Superhuman informed him that the soul-gathering dome from earlier had drained her of too much energy, and she would need days of rest. She then asked Lady Anne to handle things and fell into a deep slumber. Lady Anne screamed at her for being an inconsiderate jerk, and demanded she tell him where he could exchange the gold coins for money. However, he got no response from the heavy sleeper, who was miles away in Slumberland. He then thought of ways to sell the gold coins but realized they were afterlife coins, and without proper paperwork, it would be impossible to sell them at a jewelry store. After deep brooding, he had an idea. He could sell the gold coins at an antique store. So the next day, he headed to an antique store to sell the gold coins. Upon arriving, he met the blonde front desk lady, who asked if he intended to sell an antique, so he informed her he had gold coins to sell. Hearing about gold coins, the blonde gold digger got excited and asked him to show her. He brought out the gold coins, and the ladies were immediately entranced. The blonde lady then picked up the gold coins and inspected them closely. After a thorough inspection, she informed Lair that the coins were not old and couldn't be sold as antiques. However, she disclosed that she liked the unique pattern on them and would love to buy them personally. She offered him a price, but Lady Anne felt the offer was awful and demanded more. He then ordered the lady to return the gold coins, saying he didn't want to sell them anymore. She told him his coins were illegal and most shops wouldn't pay much for illegal items. She then brought out $3,000 from her purse, handed it to Lady Anne, and told him to scram. Lady Anne continued to insist she give him back his coins. Just then, another random lady who looked like she was missing a chromosome warned him to take the money, or they would call the cops on him, and he wouldn't get a dime but instead be thrown in jail. Seeing that the ladies had chosen violence over peace, he realized he would be in big trouble if the cops came for him, so he immediately grabbed the money and left. Later that day, Lady Anne wandered the streets, searching for stores that would buy the remaining gold coins and offer a higher price, but he didn't find a single one. Deciding to try his luck at another antique store, he set off again that afternoon. Upon arriving at the entrance of the next antique store, He stumbled upon a snake hanging on the store's signpost. He wondered why the snake had horns and was transparent, concluding it must be a spirit snake. He felt the snake was cute and decided to pet it, but as he stretched his hands, the snake immediately tried to attack him, but he managed to hold it tightly. He then tried to pull the snake off the signpost, causing the signpost to shift and fall, almost crushing his legs. Suddenly, a scrawny, ugly old man who looked like he should have died last week stepped out of the antique store. The disgusting old man approached Lady Anne, begging for mercy. Petrified by the old man's presence, Lady Anne tried to explain that the snake had tried to bite him. The old man yelled at the snake, calling her Xiaoming, and asked Lady Anne to release his grip on the snake, revealing that it could talk. Following this, the old man suggested they have a chat inside, as he might be of help to Lady Anne. He introduced himself as Liu, a Taoist, and led Lady Anne inside. As they walked inside, Lady Anne began to suspect the old man's intention. After a while they sat, and Lady Anne immediately noticed the place smelled like rotten fish and felt Liu had no sense of smell not to have realized his shack stank. A few minutes later, Liu asked what he wanted at the antique store. Lady Anne brought out the gold coins, informing Liu that he wanted to sell them. Upon seeing the gold coins, Liu was shocked to his core and nearly had a heart attack. Liu revealed to Lady Anne that the gold coin was made of yin gold, a material that could speak to spirits or be used for trade in the heavenly and earthly realms. He explained that it could trade one's fate, making it the most valuable thing in the world. Lady Anne felt disappointed, expecting Liu to mention money and a way to cash out, not a speech about value. However, Liu further explained that the item was priceless and that in Sea City, a business tycoon named Shengdong wanted to purchase one and had offered $10 million, only for the city's mage to laugh at the offer. Upon hearing this, Lady Anne became stoked, thinking he had finally struck it rich. He imagined paying Xiaomin's toll fee and having enough to ball in the Caribbean with Instagram models on an expensive yacht. Noticing Lady Anne's eagerness to sell the gold coins, Liu offered to connect him with Mr. Zhao. Zhao Shengdong, the spirit world's Elon Musk, had been searching for yin gold for ages to buy back his only daughter's life. Lady Anne agreed to the connection. As the deal was settled, Liu mentioned that his serpent, Xiaoming, seemed to like Lady Anne. He offered the snake as a parting gift, but Lady Anne rejected it because no normal human being would keep a snake as a pet. On his way home, he thought about how the blonde woman at the previous antique store had ripped him off, vowing to get even. The next day, Headmaster returned to the antique store to retrieve his gold coin, only to discover they had packed up and left. Realizing he had been scammed, he promised to teach the hot blonde scammer a hands-on lesson. He then returned to Liu's antique store, only to find it closed as well, deepening his frustration. Just as he left, he noticed Xiaoming on top of the signpost. However, when he tried talking to her, she told him to jump off a cliff. Frustrated, he threatened to make her into fish bait if she continued to ignore him. In that moment, Xiaoming transformed back to her original form, an underdeveloped girl with an appearance of a leprechaun. Meanwhile, Xiaoming, not delighted to see his ugly face again, asked him what he wanted. Lady Anne then inquired when Liu would return. She informed him that Liu had gone to Sea City to run errands and wouldn't return for a few days. Lady Anne, now worried, wondered when he would get his dough and start bawling. He further thought about how he could get his pound of flesh from the blonde bitch that scammed him. Xiaoming, however, assured him she could help him find her, claiming she knew everyone on the street. Lady Anne doubted her, wondering how she could know everyone while being hung up on a signpost all day. Xiaoming explained that being on the signpost allowed her to gather information from passersby and their conversations. Still skeptical, Lian remarked that if she were as intelligent and powerful as she claimed, Liu wouldn't have her guarding the door. Xiaoming retorted that Liu knew she was strong but didn't know she could speak human language. Lian, confused, asked why she hid this ability from her master. Xiaoming explained that Liu was a sick man who was totally messed up in the head. She further revealed that the old man was obsessed with climbing the ranks in the mage society. She added that if he eventually found out she could speak human, he would show her off like Mufasa did Simba to score points, leading to the mages fighting over her because of her powerful abilities. She disclosed that Liu, being an old weak donkey, wouldn't be able to keep her, and it would only be a matter of time before an evil mage captured her. A few minutes later, Lian then tested her knowledge by asking about the blonde woman from the antique store. Xiaoming revealed the woman's name was Wang, that she was divorced, childless, and had a penchant for G-string plot armor, which an undergarment company employee delivered to her. Xiaoming then gave him Wang's address and mentioned she lived with her godbrother. As Pennywise continued to ramble on, Lian asked her to stop as she was totally out of line and advised her to stop being a gossip. His statement upset the ugly doll, as he had called her a nosy bitch, even though he was the one who had asked for the information. Upset, Xiaoming transformed back into a snake and tried to escape, but Lian held her tightly and put her in his pocket, deciding they would find the blonde woman together. Several hours later, they arrived at Wang's heavily guarded villa. At that moment, Lian wished Xiaoming had not been a heavy sleeper, as he could have possessed her to make the job easier. He then had the idea that he could possess other spirits, so he pulled out Xiaoming from inside his pants and asked her where he could find spirits to possess. However, Xiaoming nearly entered nirvana from the garbage-smelling bomb she encountered while inside his hell. Gasping for fresh air, she asked the latrine if he had showered since birth and why his pants smelled worse than human waste. However, she then answered his question, informing him that Gideon had taken all the souls with a super spirit weapon and hadn't let any loose. Upon hearing this, Lian was shocked that the psycho snake also knew about Gideon. However, he thought there was no way in hell they could have captured all the souls in the city. Xiaoming then revealed she had an idea to make him see spirits immediately, but he would have to accept her terms. Initially, Lian felt they shouldn't be discussing terms since he knew too much about her speaking the human language and could spill the tea to her master. However, he eventually agreed to her terms and asked her to reveal the information. Xiaoming then disclosed the secret of the Bloody Mary to him. That name, Bloody Mary, sounded like a cocktail to Lian's ears. Frustrated at his ignorance, Xiaoming called him a goofishit who was too useless to do anything. She then explained that Bloody Mary was a spirit summoning game. Grasping the idea, Lian asked if spirits from foreign countries could also be summoned since Bloody Mary was from the West. Xiaoming clarified that there were no boundaries for spirits. When a person becomes a spirit, they belong to spirit kingdoms, not countries. Confused, Lian inquired about spirit kingdoms, and Xiaoming explained that they were realms where spirits lived. Realizing she had divulged a lot without securing his agreement to her terms, Xiaoming pressed Lian to agree to her condition. Lian, sensing her desperation, agreed. Xiaoming then revealed her condition. Lian should take her away from old man Liu after everything was settled. Lian was surprised but understood her reasoning, given Liu's habit of restraining her on the signpost. Xiaoming elaborated that Liu was a mental case obsessed with joining a higher-ranking mage society, to the point of creating his mage association with himself as the only member and president, which was quite embarrassing. At that moment, Lian yelled at her to stop roasting her master. He was uninterested in old people's gossip and urged her to state precisely what she wanted. She then let the cat out of the bag and told him that since Liu would be selling his yin gold coin, he would become famous and some evil mage might notice her, and the old man doesn't have the ability to protect her. Lian, not fully understanding, asked the female Krillin to clarify. She explained that the sleazy old monkey would use the sale to pitch himself as the source of the coin, gaining fame but putting her at risk since he couldn't protect her. At that moment, Yilan wondered if getting gold coins was really that difficult. However, Xiaoming begged Yilan not to abandon her and to take her with him. So Yilan asked her what else she could use her miniature size for apart from bitching and roasting people. Xiaoming then acknowledged that she was just a pathetic snake with no limbs and couldn't do much. Hearing her confession, Yilan told her she was useless since she couldn't do anything. She then asserted that she wasn't useless, as she could draw, play, and sleep. However, Yi-Lan informed her that those were exactly the things useless people do. Seeing it was proving difficult to get through Yi-Lan, she further pushed her cause and revealed that she could retrieve treasures, capture monsters, summon rain, and swallow clouds when she grew up. Yi-Lan informed her that those skills were also useless to him, because he didn't need artificial rain, and he was not hoping to fight Frankenstein. Xiaomin thought fast and then revealed he could ride her when she grew, which made the freaky-ass dude gassed. He then agreed for her to stay with him and told her to make sure she was well-fed and didn't cause trouble. Upon hearing that she could stay with Yi-Lan, Xiaoming was satisfied and fulfilled. Following this, Yi-Lan then inquired how to start summoning Bloody Mary. So at that moment, he thought the first item on his bucket list would be to get a mirror. So later that night, he ventured into the male toilet and stood before a mirror, which made Xiaoming laugh at how moronic the dude was. As she continued to laugh at his worthless face, Yi-Lan brought out his refined kitchen knife, and Xiaoming immediately thought he desired to slice off her ugly slime head if she continued laughing like a deranged clown. Yi-Lan pulled out the knife and unleashed fire, asking Xiaoming if the fire, combined with the mirror's effect, would summon Bloody Mary. Tired of his antics, Xiaoming told him to ditch the rubbish and follow her instructions. She told him to close his eyes and say Bloody Mary 3 times. So Yi-Lan closed his eyes and did as instructed, and suddenly, the toilet light began to flicker, and an eerie swoosh sound echoed through the room. That instant, Xiaoming held tightly to Yi-Lan as they beheld a scary figure of a female with menacing red eyes, drenched in blood in the mirror. Just then, Bloody Mary emerged from the mirror and tried to claw at Yi-Lan's face, but he grabbed her hands, and a struggle ensued. Bloody Mary shoved Yi-Lan to the ground, and he wondered why she wasn't as strong as the other ghosts he had encountered. Xiaoming noticed Bloody Mary heading back into the mirror and signaled Yi-Lan, urging him to grab her before completely disappearing. Yi-Lan thrust his hands into the mirror portal, trying to pull her out by the hair. In the blink of an eye, she turned into a mist and started attacking. As Yi-Lan thought of ways to defeat the mist, Xiaoming instructed him to use the Earthfire Saber to slash her. So Yi-Lan pulled out his kitchen knife and readied himself to slash the claws of Bloody Mary. Yi-Lan slashed through the mist, realizing it affected Bloody Mary, so he intensified his attacks. With each slash, she weakened until she fell to the ground and turned to dust. Noticing Bloody Mary had become Dusty Mary, they decided to perform the ritual again. This time, Xiaoming warned him not to use the Earthfire blade, so Yi-Lan resolved to use the rope Xiaoming had given him. At that moment, he held both weapons and uttered Bloody Mary thrice. Just then, Bloody Mary appeared in the mirror and tried clawing at his face again. Seeing the same ugly face, Mary retreated into the mirror. But this time, Yi-Lan used the rope and held her by the throat, dragging her out of the enchanted mirror with intense efforts. She transformed into mist again, struggling to free herself, but fell to the ground and turned to dust. Watching the scene unfold, Xiaoming asked Yi-Lan if he could keep it up, as another Bloody Mary had just turned to dust. Growing frustrated, Yi-Lan decided to try one last time. He held the weapons, muttered Bloody Mary thrice again, and the third Bloody Mary appeared in the mirror. This time, he tied her up with the rope. Desperate, Yi-Lan pleaded with her to let him penetrate her body, promising to be quick. Water flowed from within her as he prepared himself and made the connection. Yi-Lan successfully possessed her, causing Xiaoming to tremble with fear as she kept calling him a heavenly ghost. Upon hearing Xiaoming call him a heavenly ghost, Yi-Lan wondered why she used that term. He asked her what it meant, but Xiaoming evaded the question, claiming she needed to cook. Yi-Lan grabbed her by the tail as she tried to escape, reminding her that snakes don't cook. Realizing she couldn't avoid the conversation, Xiaoming reluctantly stayed. A few minutes later, he decided to go get his yin gold coins from Wang, and as he tried to move, he wondered why he was moving like a slob. So he thought of dispossessing the Bloody Mary's spirit, tying her up, and then possessing her when he got to the location. Just then, he realized that might be a bad idea, as the mental case spirit might just eyes Kai herself before they arrived. He then heard Xiaoming's voice and realized he needed to understand the spirit better to utilize her effectively. Since she had a connection with mirrors, Yi-Lan thought he could use this to his advantage. He decided to teleport to the blonde's location through the mirror, and while he concentrated on the mirror, he found himself outside the school's toilet. On getting outside, Yi-Lan saw the sky filled with tiny sparkly dots. Curious, he touched one of the dots and was immediately transported to an unknown location. He looked around and realized he was in the girl's shower room, so he took advantage of the opportunity to record some amazing plots. So he opened the shower door for a sneak peek, and just then, he saw an ugly waste of space having a bath. He immediately cursed his eyes for seeing the horrible sight and wished to purge his mind completely of the haunting memory. That instant, he fled from the disgusting scene and teleported into the mirror again. However, this time, he thought the sparkly dots connected to certain places, and with the correct coordinate, he should be able to get to Wang in time. So he checked Google Maps to get the correct coordinates, and after inserting her address, he got the right coordinates. That instant, he was teleported to Wang's apartment. He soon found himself in the bedroom mirror and noticed Wang putting on makeup. He immediately noticed her curvy figure 8 and wondered why she was putting on makeup in the middle of the night. As he scanned the room, he realized she wasn't alone. Another dude was also there. Looking intently at the guy, Yilan wondered why his face looked like a pig had taken a dump on it. On the other hand, the ugly bald Thanos discussed with Wang, telling her to hurry up, and she was an idiot to put on makeup in the middle of the night. Wang responded and told him every lady puts on makeup in the middle of the night, no matter how fugly they may be. She further informed him they had the stuff and the customers could wait. She added that by scaring the customers, they would definitely get a better price. The OP's Voldemort then moved towards her and pointed out that Bo, the Sea City boss, was the customer buying the stuff. He made her understand that if she made the Godfather wait, she should be ready to see either Buddha or the devil. While Wang didn't respond to the nonsense talk, he didn't stop but continued to ramble on. He inquired if the worthless high school kid would eventually come looking for the gold coin since it is very valuable. At that moment, the ogre noticed a beautiful sight. He stared deeply and realized that Wang had rice cake the size of the entire Middle East. As he thought of pulling down his shorts and walking, an evil spirit immediately entered the room and possessed him. The evil spirit then ordered him to eliminate the so he immediately put on spiked knuckles and started demanding Wang give him the gold coin so he could get it to the car. As he persisted, she told him the location of the gold coin in the room, and upon receiving the information, he gave her a skin-tearing uppercut from the back with the spiked knuckles that spurted blood everywhere. While this was ongoing, Yilan watched from inside the mirror of the room with shock, realizing that the disgusting, ugly fatso had executed Wang without thinking twice. After the brutal scene, the ugly Thanos moved to the location of the gold coin. He carried the box containing the yin gold coin, and he also carried a dead Wang out of the room. Meanwhile, Yilan watched from the room's mirror as his gold coin slipped from his hand. Several minutes later, the fatso put Wang inside the trunk of the car, and just as he was about to leave, Yilan teleported into the car to get his gold coin and call the cops on the ugly fat ogre. That moment, just as he stretched to pick up his gold coin from the front seat of the moving car, suddenly a hand halted his movement and held his hands tightly. He suddenly noticed a disgusting, ugly ghost who asked why he was touching the gold. Yilan immediately yelled at the ghost, telling him the gold belonged to him, but the ghost prepared to attack him, roaring menacingly. Yilan then struck it with his hands, causing a burning sensation that affected the ugly Method driver Liuzi, who immediately turned to check what was happening but didn't see anything. However, Yilan and the ghost continued to fight. Suddenly, Yilan noticed a terrible smell that nearly ended his mission, sending him straight to the afterlife as the ghost wished away. He wondered if the disgusting ghost had a bath with toilet water. At that moment, with the disgusting ghost gone, Yilan thought of eliminating the ugly Method Liuzi. But he realized Bio was the real enemy, who controlled a ghost that possessed him to eliminate Wang. He further thought that even though Wang had entered Nirvana successfully, they could still trace and find him through the antique store's surveillance camera. So he decided to find Bio, or he would be in danger. Yilan then followed Liuzi in the car to Bio's residence. Several hours later, they pulled up at Bio's residence. Liuzi then knocked at the door, demanding to deliver the gold to Bio. However, Lei Yan followed him into the courtyard and stumbled upon mean-looking golems, wondering if they were alive. Just then, one of the golems collected the gold coin from Liuzi. The golem inquired about Wang's cold dead body, and Liuzi informed him she was in the trunk, so they went together to check the trunk. A few minutes later, the golems carrying Wang's body, along with Liuzi, walked into the house and banged the door. Lei Yan knew he had to follow them inside to catch a glimpse of Bio. Just then, he dashed toward the closed door. But Xiaoming began to alert him to halt, that something was amiss. She warned him that she felt an evil mage's presence and questioned why he was in Bio's courtyard. At that instant, Yilan knew something wasn't right, so he asked her if she knew Bio. With fear, she explained that Bio was the big boss of the underground mage society. However, Yilan pointed out that he didn't care who the shithead was. He was only interested in his gold and needed to get it back. Xiaoming told him not to act like a fool and let his ego, desire for wealth, and hot IG models cloud his reasoning. She further mentioned that if he had a death wish, he could go into the house, but as for her, she was heading back to Liu's place. She left, leaving Yilan wondering if the place was really that scary. Just as he turned, he began to hear boss music. He was suddenly faced with a giant Shao Kahn ripoff ghost who asked why he was trespassing. At that moment, the ghost identified him as Bloody Mary and asked what he wanted on the premises. Yilan, thinking quickly, decided to pull a stunt and asked the ghost to show his door guardian ID. The ghost, shocked and bewildered, wondered how he ended up conversing with a nutcase. Nevertheless, the ghost security asked what ID Yilan was referring to. Yilan then mentioned that the black-faced god required every door guardian to have an ID to carry out his duties effectively. The ghost, still puzzled, asked who this black-faced god was. Yilan refused to reveal that the black-faced god he referred to was his headmaster, Liu. Instead, he insisted the ghost not change the topic and demanded to see his ID. The ghost security admitted he didn't have an ID because his company hadn't issued one when they assigned him there. Yilan then told him he was working illegally and being scammed by an unscrupulous company, and urged him to verify the truth for himself. At that moment, Yilan phased through the locked door and advanced toward the main house while the ghost tried to stop him. As the guard chased after him, Yilan decided to hide in a corner of the building. Watching the moronic ghost search for him, Yilan thought the guard must have died from stupidity, as he was finding it difficult to locate him even though he was hiding nearby. After a few minutes, Yilan moved inside the courtyard to find Bio. He realized he could navigate the maze quickly, as now he was more familiar with Bloody Mary's body, unlike earlier when he moved like an 80-year-old granny. After searching for hours, he wondered where Bio and Liuzi could be. Suddenly, he saw them at the main house's entrance, and as he approached, they entered the house and shut the door. In an instant, Yilan decided to fly and enter through a window. On getting to the window, he peered inside and saw Bio, an ugly man with a ridiculously long nose and his golems. Meanwhile, Liuzi was presenting the box of gold to Bio. Just then, Bio walked up to him, looked him straight in the eyes, and asked what had happened on his way to the courtyard. Terrified, Liuzi, who had already peed his pants, responded that nothing much happened except for the screams he heard inside the car and a voice urging him to go faster. After that, he handed the box of gold to Bio, who immediately grabbed his face and nearly choked him. In the blink of an eye, Bio sucked out his spirit like Shao Kahn, draining Liuzi until he went from Winnie the Pooh to Skinny the Pooh. However, Yilan, who watched the horrific scene from the window, was shocked. Just then, Bio noticed his disgusting aura and told him to come inside and stop hiding. That instant, Yilan was terrified, thinking he had finally been caught. Just as he considered surrendering, a random orange-haired girl made a dramatic entrance by crashing through the window, sending shards of glass flying in all directions. She stomped the ground with a loud thud and declared there was no need to hide since she had been exposed. At that moment, Yilan was both surprised and entranced by her beauty. Meanwhile, the orange-haired girl was immediately ambushed by Bio's men in black, who were ready to give her a quick exit from this world. As this was going on, Yilan considered becoming her prince charming by saving her if Bio's minions attacked. However, the orange-haired girl informed Bio that she had come to retrieve something from him and hoped he would give it to her. Bio, staring at her, asked for her name since she had been responsible for eliminating his servant spirit. The orange-haired girl replied that he did not need to know her name since he was dying soon. With that, she fired a powerful energy blast at Bio, obliterating him and impaling his entire gut in an instant. Seeing their boss defeated in just one strike, the men in black scattered like cats chased by a vacuum cleaner. The orange-haired girl then waved her hand, summoning a glowing dragon-slaying sword, and held it threateningly over Bio, ready to slice him like a useless chicken. Just as she was about to sever his useless head, Bio roared like a bear and blasted her with a disgusting green mist. In that instant, a black spirit dispossessed Bio's body, leaving him for dead, and repossessed the golem. which immediately transformed into Bio, stunning the orange-haired girl. She immediately took a karate stance, clenching her glowing sword, and charged at him. Suddenly, she slipped and fell. Meanwhile, watching the scene unfold, Yilan wondered if the orange-haired girl had been poisoned. On seeing her fall, Bio laughed maniacally like a true manga villain, reveling in her struggle on the floor like a fish out of water. That instant, he grabbed her by the hair and pulled her up, mocking her uselessness and asking if the Kong Kong sect sent her. She revealed that he had been busted for Kang Many to refine the 100-spirit pill, and that even if she failed to eliminate him, someone else would. Hearing this angered Bio, who cast her to the ground and declared that no one could end him and that he would live a life of freedom and wealth. He then showed her the yin gold coin, boasting that with it, he didn't need to refine the spirit pill anymore. He could use the gold coin to travel to any world he desired. Just then, he slit his wrist and poured his blood on the gold coin in a bid to use it. On the other hand, Yilan, watching through the window, grew tense as he saw his $10 million about to vanish. So he immediately floated down and screamed at Bio to stop. Upon seeing him, Bio and the orange-haired girl were stunned and wondered who the hideous drag queen was. However, Yilan suddenly realized he couldn't float as usual, as a force pulled him to the ground, slamming him down. While on the ground, he informed Bio that the gold coin belonged to him. Bio glanced at his pathetic state and mocked him for having balls of steel to come to his courtyard and demand something from him. Yilan, undeterred, insisted that the gold coin was his and demanded its return. Irritated by Yilan's persistence, Bio suddenly launched a fire magic scroll at him. However, as the fire scroll was about to hit him, Yilan grabbed it with his hands, extinguished the flames, and wondered why Bio would launch a useless blazing paper at him. Just then, the paper turned into a bomb and exploded in his ugly face. Surprisingly, the explosion did not affect Yilan, leaving Bio shocked. Furious, Bio demanded to know what abracadabra Yilan was displaying because his attack was supposed to end it in a flash. Yilan didn't two shits about what he wanted and kept demanding the useless thief return his gold coin, further irritating Bio. Enraged, Bio declared he would show Yilan his overpowered soul suppression talisman. That instant, he fired multiple fire magic scrolls at Yilan, which stuck all over his body. Observing the paper attack, Yilan wondered if Bio had once worked as a flyer boy for a newspaper company to be much in love with papers. This comment enraged Bio, who summoned his golden sword and charged at Yilan, slashing without control to end the thorn in his flesh. However, Yilan managed to dodge every attack. After several failed attempts, Bio soon grew tired. Yilan mockingly asked if he wanted to rest before continuing the second round. Infuriated, Bio swore to end him, even if it was the last thing he did. Bio then duplicated himself, with one half standing behind Yilan, who was unaware. The doppelganger quickly charged, wielding the golden scroll sword, and impaled Yilan's rice cake. However, the attack was weak, and Yilan turned to see who had poked him with a pencil. Seeing the doppelganger, Yilan became furious. He lunged at ultra speed, retrieved the golden scroll sword, and decided he had enough of Bio's antics. Yilan then impaled Bio with the scroll sword in his magnum, determined to end him and his generation once and for all. At that instant, the black spirit left Bio's clone, and the orange-haired girl instructed Yilan to obliterate the real Bio quickly. Witnessing Yilan's impressive attack on his clone, Bio performed hand gestures and summoned the enraged Shao Kahn guard. Bio immediately ordered him to obliterate Yilan. Upon sighting Yilan, the guard recognized him as the nuisance from the entrance, and warned him to prepare to meet his maker. However, Yilan sarcastically asked the security guard if he had finally found his permit, but the angry ghost wasn't fooled this time. He retorted that he didn't need a security guard permit. After a while, the two Morons began to argue over the use of a permit, further injuring Bio, who screamed at the guard to silence his filthy mouth and informed him that he didn't summon him to start behaving like a clown. Bio then ordered the security guard to put his giant stature to better use and end Yilan immediately. At that moment, the guard charged at Yilan, but Yilan quickly unleashed his rope and tied him up, suspending the big guy from the house's roof. Bio, unable to contain himself any longer, threatened Yilan, declaring that one of them must die, and it certainly wouldn't be him. Yilan calmly responded that he hadn't come all this way just to ask Bio. His gold coin was more important than Bio's worthless life. Realizing that all the nutcase wanted was money, Bio saw the futility in wasting his fighting skills on him and offered to buy the gold coin from Yilan. However, the poisoned orange-haired girl warned Yilan not to sell the gold coin to Bio, as it would allow the menace to escape to other worlds and even go to Gideon. She further cautioned that the spirits of those Bio had vanquished would never forgive Yilan if he sold the coin to him. Yilan, thinking the girl must be bonkers for advising against accepting money, considered the best price he could demand from the evil lord. He then told Bio the price was $1 billion. Upon hearing the outrageous price, Bio yelled at Yilan for being an inconsiderate fool. Yilan then reduced the price to $50 million, but Bro, being both evil and broke, couldn't afford it. Frustrated and angry at him for calling prices he couldn't afford, Bio transformed into a light-skinned Venom and discharged a devastating evil black mist at Yilan. At that moment, Mrs. Orange warned Yilan that the black mist contained the 100-spirit pill and that he should be careful, but the warning came too late. The spirit pill had already hit Yilan, who tried to quench it with his palm. However, the pill exploded, sending Yilan crashing to the ground and exploding part of the building. Seeing the damage his attack had caused, Bio smirked, thinking there was no way Yilan could escape from this, and no excuse could save him from hell. Meanwhile, outside the courtyard, Gideon officials, Wenru, and the random dude arrived. Inside, Bio decided the orange-haired girl had outlived her purpose and was next in line to visit Buddha. He then stepped on her to crush her skull to pieces, but was alerted by the sound of someone coughing behind him. Turning, he was utterly stunned to see that Yilan had survived the 100-spirit attack. Suddenly, a blinding light filled the courtyard. As they squinted, they noticed Wenru had summoned an energy ball. At that moment, she cast an energy sphere called the Golden Cauldron, which covered the entire courtyard. Yilan immediately felt a sharp pain in his heart and emerged from the body of Bloody Mary. On seeing Yilan, who was now out of Bloody Mary, Bio watched in disbelief, wondering who the worthless loser was. At that moment, Bio noticed the Golden Cauldron, which sent a wave of fear through him. Upon seeing the Golden Cauldron, Bio immediately knew that Gideon officials were on the premises, so he turned and asked Yilan if Gideon had sent him. Yilan vehemently denied any association with Gideon, but Bio didn't believe him and thought he was just a disgusting liar, thinking only someone from Gideon could activate the Golden Cauldron. Bio, now angry and depressed, lamented that even though he had only a few days to live, Gideon had come to ruin his plans of performing spirit reincarnation and traveling in his flesh. That moment, Yilan felt a pang of pity for Bio, understanding that his imminent death was the reason he sought spirit reincarnation, and refined the 100-spirit pill to buy a way out from Gideon with the Yin gold coin. Just then, Bio became deranged with rage and swore to take Yilan with him to the afterlife for ruining his 30 years of effort. He immediately unleashed the evil mist within him. Realizing he couldn't face off with Bio without possessing something, Yilan decided to scram. That instant, the entire building began to blow up from Bio summoning too much evil mist. Noticing the disaster, Yilan quickly dragged the orange-haired girl, with Bloody Mary floating beside him, as they all scrambled to avoid being blown up. Meanwhile, Bio suddenly transformed into a monstrous dark mist, levitating stones with his dark magic and sending them to Yilan, who was hit and cemented to the ground. The transformation into a ruthless giant monster was completed, totally shocking Yilan, who knew he was finally toast. Just then, the monstrous Biao landed a giant fist toward Yilan, attempting to crush him. But Yilan narrowly evaded the attack and fled, carrying the orange-haired girl with him. Seeing Yilan flee only angered Bio further, as he landed multiple blows to the ground. His attack caused tremors that affected the running Yilan, making him crash to the ground with the orange-haired girl in his arms. However, Yilan was undeterred and continued to run while carrying the hot baggage that slowed him down. Exhausted, he soon found a spot to hide. At that moment, he considered leaving the orange-haired girl behind, but quickly dismissed the idea, realizing she was one hot chick for a potential plot. Meanwhile, the monstrous Biao continued searching the entire courtyard for Yilan, furious that his elusive target was still evading him. On the other hand, Yilan remembered he still had the speed of Flash, even without possessing any ghost, and considered using it. Just then, Bloody Mary approached him, and he became pissed that the bloody ghost was still hanging around instead of escaping to save herself. At that instant, Biao sighted him and resumed his attack, but Yilan dashed towards the outside entrance. Suddenly, he hit something invisible, landing on the ground and bleeding from his nose. He immediately remembered the invisible barrier, the golden cauldron set up by Gideon. Furious and desperate, Yelan launched a mid-air attack and charged at the barrier, landing a powerful Adonis Creed punch. However, his attack had no effect on the shield. With Biao still searching for him, Yelan decided to look for any opening in the shield from which he could escape. He soon found a room in the courtyard and busted open a wall. As he entered, he suddenly noticed a wall created by the golden cauldron and immediately thought of ways to bypass the golden shield. Just then, he saw Bloody Mary whooshing in and out of the shield like it was nothing, which gagged the shit out of him. At that moment, he realized the golden barrier only prohibited human beings from leaving, not spirits. He immediately remembered Xiaoman and her rope, but realized he had used it to tie up the big freak security guard earlier and thought it was impossible to go back now. Just when he thought all hope was lost, Xiaoman suddenly materialized before his eyes, making him the happiest dude alive. Despite his happiness to see his ghost babe, Xiaoman was pissed as hell with him. She demanded to know why the whole scene was a total mess with the giant monster and Gideon officials on the premises. Yelan tried explaining that everything happened out of love and that he did it to get the needed tollgate fee to get her to paradise. However, Xiaoman didn't believe a word he said. She responded that something must have really pissed Bio off for him to resort to burning his own soul, and it wasn't just about a gold coin. She added that burning one's soul, although it would give the spirit enhanced power for 20 minutes, had the terrible consequence of crushing the spirit to the point of no reincarnation. Xiaoman then suggested they find a way out, so Yelan informed her that the barrier prevented him from leaving, but she could pass through it as it couldn't hinder her. However, Xiaoman couldn't leave him behind, but Yelan proposed that she save herself as Bio only had 20 minutes before he self-destructed. He would wait till then for Bio to isekai himself, and then he would find a way to attack the Gideon officials and escape. Just then, an awkward quietness and tranquility settled in as monstrous Bio had been summoned by the random Gideon dude for interrogation. Will Yelan survive the giant monstrous Bio? If you want a part 2, comment Bloody Mary. Until next time, my fellow plotters,